Central Europe, northern Lower Saxony. Work in a heather skep apiary during the prime swarming period. It is early June in the cultivated heathland area between Bremen and Hamburg. For the heather beekeepers on the Klintwort's bee farm, the season of most intensive work now begins. It is the swarming season of the heathland bees. In all the skeps, the bees have built queen cells to rear young queens. 9 days after the eggs were laid, the queen larvae, floating in their reservoirs of royal jelly, have developed up to the stage when the cells are ready to be capped over. After another 7 days, the young queens are mature. Sealed and unsealed queen cells are continuously checked and nurtured by the worker bees. Soon after the first queen cells have been capped over, the old queen leaves the skep together with a few thousand workers to found a new colony. If a prime swarm is not prevented from flying, it first settles close by, preferably under overhanging branches, where it forms a dense cluster. From dawn till dusk, as long as the sun lures the bees out, head beekeeper Georg Klintwort and his assistants watch the stocks that are ready to swarm and have been brought back from the outstands to the house apiary. To avoid losing bees, the prime swarms have to be caught directly on leaving the skep. The experienced beekeeper can tell from their behavior at the entrance whether the bees are about to swarm. So he has to keep a continual watch on the flight entrances. He can confirm his suspicions by taking a look inside the skep. A large number of queen cells, some of which have already been capped, indicate that the stocks in these skeps are prepared for swarming. If the bees are restless and tend to run back and forth in the beeways, this is an imminent sign of swarming. Swarming begins with the first scouts pouring out of the entrance. They attract the other bees along with them, which in turn hustle out the old queen. The prime swarm flies off. This is the moment for the beekeeper to intervene. By spreading a swarm catching bag over the flight entrance, he can prevent the prime swarm from flying away. He uses earth to close a gap, which the bees might use as an emergency exit. Each swarming skep is marked with a leafy twig or a wooden tag. The swarm catchers have been made by the beekeepers themselves. The bees are encouraged to enter the bag by raising it slightly above the level of the flight entrance. Otherwise, there is danger of the bees withdrawing into the skep again. The behavior of the prime swarm can be observed through the transparent gauze in the middle section of the bag. Also, the humming of the emerging bees is a good indicator of the progress of swarming. Every gap between the skep and the stand, which the beekeeper notices on his control rounds, is immediately sealed. It's usually sufficient to surround the base with a cord. If, after 6 to 10 minutes, no further bees emerge from the skep, the catching bag can be unfastened and hung up in the shade. Under the shade of the shed roof, the bees gradually calm down. In a large home apiary like this one, several swarms may emerge almost simultaneously. The experienced eye of the beekeeper can detect the first signs of swarming even at some distance and distinguish them from the customary warm weather activity at the flight entrance. Prepared with cords and with a swarm-catching bag in his hand, the beekeeper is equipped for every contingency. Warm, sunny days and humid weather in particular encourage the bees to swarm. On such occasions, anything up to 50 prime swarms might emerge at the Klindworth's home apiary on a single day. In cooler weather, swarming occurs only sporadically. Just as in free-flying swarms, the bees in the shaded hanging bags collect around their queen to form the swarm cluster. If, on the other hand, the bees continue to move about restlessly while humming loudly, the queen is obviously absent. A queen-less swarm will be released so that the bees can return to their home skep. For 2 or 3 weeks, the beekeepers at the home apiary are on their feet all day, preventing the prime swarms from escaping. As soon as the bees have contracted to a dense cluster at the top of the swarm catcher, they can easily be shaken out of the bag. During the course of each swarming day, the prime swarms are packed in travelling boxes. In former times, the heather skepist would put the prime swarms in empty skeps, where they would draw out new comb and store heather honey before the stocks were disposed of. They would not keep a prime swarm stock with its old queen over the winter. Today, the sale of prime swarms is a guaranteed source of income for the Klindworth apiary. Hive apiarists from as far afield as South Germany have already placed orders for swarms to upgrade their stocks. one prime swarm can provide them with anything from 2.5 to 4 pounds of bees. The same evening, the travelling boxes, provided with bee candy, are sent for dispatch by rail. If no further prime swarms can be reckoned with today, all the swarmed skeps are covered over with transport cloths made of gauze. The flight entrances are left open until the evening, when the skeps are taken to the nearby outstand at Marshhorst, where the beekeeper waits for the second swarms, or casts, to emerge from the skeps. The empty spaces will be filled with further swarming skeps taken from the other outstands. Depending on the number of overwintered stocks, the Klindwort bee farm can reckon with anything up to 700 prime swarms in a given swarming season. To encourage swarming, all the other stocks in the home apiary are fed with sugar syrup, which in the old days used to be laced with a little spirits. This is because only well-fed bees are prepared to go swarming.